when the elders beat the pastor to church, you know you're in trouble. And I'm sitting there. I'm having one of those moments where I'm like, is this for real?
Yeah.
Is this a dream?
Yeah.
Is this a nightmare that I wake up from like, oh man, that was crazy? When he's doing this, dude, I'm not, my mind just went, I was already in complete confusion of, is this for real? And then when he did this, it took it to a whole nother level of,
I can imagine.
And I'm just sitting, I'm like, and in my mind, I'm like, God, is this really happening? God, we are in a church and having an elders meeting. And these are the elders of the church. Is this really happening? So both of us left the conversation last week with the angry mob, and what we thought was kind of final.
It wasn't final.
It wasn't final.
There's nothing final about it.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
We both talked, and God had revealed something to both of us, and we both felt like we needed to do at least the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And so here we are, and I think I'll start with mine, because I think it kind of leads into yours.
Mm-hmm.
So as I was even just editing the footage and just trying to wrap it up and, get number 2 in the books, I guess, I was still left with, what do we do? Like, we've identified the angry mob, and I think there's an element to the angry mob needs to work on their anger. The angry mob needs to work on controlling their short fuses and needs to practice some maturity there. But I still feel like there's more for me as well. Like, well, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to handle the angry mob? Like, I can sit here and tell the angry mob what they're supposed to do, but what am I supposed to do about the angry mob? And I'm sitting there like, man, we can sit here and we can kick a dead horse all we want. But if that dead horse isn't moving, what are you going to do? You're just going to continue to just keep beating the dead horse?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you just going to move on with life? Like, at some point, you got to just move on.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're only going to be able to beat a dead horse for so long before I'm like, man, we just got to just start moving on. Whether the dead horse gets it or not, we just got to start moving on and talking about other things. And so that was one thought that I had as far as just, so one, the angry mob needs to handle their business. But everybody else who's dealing with the angry mob also needs to, at some point, just move on. Or, again, how do we interact with the angry mob? And so I'm like, at some point, we need to talk about life. And then it's funny because you end up mentioning that then later. And so then I was reading yesterday. and I know where your thought, well, I'll let you do your thought first. Because I think that plays into yours. But then I'm going to come back in with a verse that I was reading. And I'm like, man, this throws me for another loop. So that's where my thoughts were.
Mm-hmm.
Where did your thoughts take you?
Well, I actually began to have a change of heart while we were actually having the conversation, because I think we began to portray a picture of what we call the angry mob, which are these people that are in this place that become combative or short-fused, as you called it, confrontational, boisterous, manipulative with their actions and their voice, and trying to control and trying to stifle or step down or push down or stop or whatever it is their motivation is. Usually it's out of fear, right? But they're trying to intimidate, as it were, trying to get their way. And as I processed it, I did two things. I looked at my life and I said, have I ever been in the mob? Did I lead the mob? Did I formulate and calculate and form the mob? Did I call everyone to come out and be in the mob?
Yeah.
Have I done that? And then the other side of it is being able to get and understand is, why are they angry? We understand mob mentality, right? Yeah. It's the birds of the feather flock together. And that's the first thing that you do, is you try and get people that think alike to join with you. It gives you some level of confidence that maybe, just maybe, you might be right on this.
Right.
And that there's something that needs to be done. We have to do something. But what I began to start processing was, is there a chance that we're seeing them in a completely incorrect way. We're seeing the actions that they're doing, maybe even the reactions
Right, yeah.
to what we did
Yeah.
as leadership, as it were, elders, pastors, teachers, whatever. They're reactionary. They didn't come in angry, they got angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
They weren't a mob when it started, they formed a mob.
Yeah.
They were all individuals. They formed it over and around some call to do something.
Correct something.
They have to try and fix it.
Right.
But as I began to start processing it, I got to thinking in my heart, I said, Lord, what if there's a contributing factor here that we're missing that could have been the root cause of what it is that causes them to rise up and to do what it is? So as I began to process, I really felt like the Lord was talking to me about something He and I have discussed many times in the past. And that's the level of blindness that comes on a person, that they end up being in the midst of something and they can't see the forest for the trees. So a blindness comes over us. I saw it I was in a major lawsuit not too many years ago, and I literally saw people that I had spent 10, 12, 15 years of my life with, every day working, completely blind to what the truth was related to the situation that we were having. It's like, they were there. How could they not possibly?
Right.
They know what the truth is. But they were so blinded by the rage or the anger or the disappointment, whatever it was, that emotion literally stopped them from seeing what the truth was. They literally wrote affidavits and submitted them to the court under oath, knowing, in my mind, knowing what they wrote wasn't true.
Right.
But in their mind, because of the rage and the discontent, the disappointment, disillusion, whatever it was that they had, it was true to them, and that's the way they saw it. But it was total blindness.
Well, do you think it was true to them, or do you think it was the ends justify the means? So it's like, we know that we're fidgeting a little bit on these affidavits. We know that we're lying, but the lie is not as great as getting what we want out of this deal.
Yeah.
Which is what the Pharisees did to Jesus.
Yeah.
Said last week,
that's a really good question.
they broke their own law.
I don't think it was selective blindness. Let's put it that way. I don't think it was. I think their fury, the frothing of the mouth that they were,
Right.
it was just this extension of this pain that they were feeling, and it was the lashing out of the pain. They wanted someone else to feel the pain.
Right.
They had done what was wrong. They knew they'd done what was wrong. They'd gotten caught doing what was wrong. So they were fleshing out and they were lashing out, thinking that if I make their life worse, maybe they'll back off on what I'm responsible for. But what I ended up seeing is that they became blinded to what the truth was. And I mean, that's why you go to court, right? You swear, I'll tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. You have witnesses that'll come and they'll say, well, I saw it this way and I saw it that way. Well, one of them's not telling the truth.
Right.
So either one of them's intentionally lying or they didn't see it the same way.
Right.
And that's what I begin to see, is that these people that were involved with my life, and I believe the same way that we see the Jews and what happened with Jesus, as we talked about last week, is that they reacted in such a way that caused a blindness to come on them, and they saw through the lens of that anger. They saw from the lens of that blasphemy. He's saying he's God. He's making these claims. He's healing people and doing work on Sabbath, and we know generations they're aghast by what happened, and it causes them to have a distorted view of what's actually happening in the real time. And the Lord just really began to start putting empathy in my heart for the people that we're talking about, that we want to say they're wicked to the core because of the way they're treating us and what they're doing to us and what we believe they're doing to the church. They're tearing it limb from the inside.
Right. Yeah.
But I wonder if we're seeing that clearly. Are we seeing a distorted view because of what we're reacting to? that we may not see the pain that they're experiencing because what has happened or what is about to happen.
Right.
And they're reacting to it. Are we then in turn reacting, causing us to not see them clearly? So the Lord began to say, look, Jody, you need to have an understanding of what blindness, not only what attributes to blindness, but what blindness causes when you walk in it. Right. And he gave me an example. He said, look, you would never, ever be upset with someone that's physically blind from birth. And they would walk out of a room and forget to turn the light off. Right. You would never be upset with them because you would realize, well, number one, they don't know what light looks like.
Right, yeah.
Number two, they don't know where the light switch is. They can't see it.
Yeah.
And number three, they don't know that the light is on because you turned it on. So you would have an empathetic notion towards them because of the situation that they find themselves in. They can't help their blindness.
Yeah, you're not going to yell at them, hey, why don't you turn the light out?
What was that?
I said, you're not going to yell at them and say, hey, turn the light out.
Right.
Why didn't you turn the light out?
They're like, what light?
Yeah.
Yeah. What switch?
Yeah,
I don't even know. How does the switch? Do you switch it up or do you push it down? Yeah. I don't even know. I've never turned the light switch off.
I don't know what light is.
Yeah. I have no idea. And I think that may be a situation that we're talking about. I think we may have people that are in our life that are dedicated to the same call of God that we are, in the same kingdom, possibly in the same church, that are blinded because of events and situations that have occurred to such a point that they can't see the light switch anymore. They have completely lost their capability of seeing daylight and dark, or brightness, truth and a lie is what I call it.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw. I saw men that I trusted with my life in a business setting that I knew for years look me in the eye and say lies that I know that they knew inside had to have, because they were in the situation. Like I said, they were a witness. They were there. Yeah. And they would say something completely the opposite. And they were fully convinced what they were saying was right, and they were fully convinced that I was wrong and evil. They were so blinded.
Like, I understand it's the hurting people hurt people. It's like the only reason they're lashing out is because they're hurting themselves. But when you look at the relationship that Jesus had with the Pharisees, do you think he had empathy towards them? Because there were times where he just flat out called them out, like, you brood of vipers, you whitewashed tombs.
Yeah.
That to me doesn't look like empathy, like, oh man, I feel sorry for you guys because you're hurting yourself.
But he also wept over Jerusalem and said, oh, how I long to draw. They were in Jerusalem.
Right.
They were in Jerusalem.
Now, there's a scripture that says God desires that all men would come to a knowledge of him.
Right.
So obviously that includes the Pharisees and everybody. And Christ would have had the same desire, obviously. But there is an element, though, that when he is met face to face with the Pharisees, there's a level that I don't see empathy.
Well, I know there's definitely frustration and anger, but I think part of that was because I believe they were facilitating the distortion of what was happening to the followers, to the others, and they were leading others astray. Right? They weren't good shepherds. They weren't telling the truth. Right. They were actually doing more harm than good. They were causing people to fall into darkness and follow their blindness. And I think that's what upset him more than anything, was the fact that, no, they should know the truth. They know the scriptures. They know the prophets.
Right, yeah.
They've read it since birth. They've been in this their whole life, and their fathers and their grandfathers and their grandfathers' grandfathers for generations. They should know that I'm the culmination of those prophets.
So how do you have empathy towards that? How do you have empathy towards that if they know? This, to me, that's not blindness.
Right.
To me, it's like they know what they're doing. So how do you have empathy towards that?
Well, I think there has to be a separation between the people that are leading those into darkness and those that are following them into that darkness. That's where I think the differentiation is. We're talking mainly about leaders that most certainly have a distorted picture of what the truth is and are not willing to find out what the truth is and are doing all they can to get people to have distorted views themselves of what's going on. I think they're trying to rally the troops. I mean, remember, the angry mob in Jesus' day, especially related to the crucifixion, that was the church that put them up to that.
Right.
They literally had people that would come and testify and say lies about Jesus to try and get them to convict them under Roman law.
Right.
They put a plan together that was distortion to be able to trap whoever was going to be the decision maker with evidence that wasn't true. So I think there's a separation between that and then let's call the laity, the people that are in the pews, that are our friends and our neighbors, that they're just going off of what they heard.
So how do you identify the two? Because I do believe that there are, and I'm not saying that you're wrong. I think I absolutely know that there are some people that are just blindly following the angry mob, and become part of the angry mob themselves without knowing that what they're doing is wrong. But how do you distinguish? How do you discern between? Because only God knows the hearts of people. You and I, we don't know the hearts of people.
Right.
I mean, we have discernment to some degree, but that doesn't mean that discernment's going to be accurate all the time. And I may look at an individual and be like, man, I think his heart is wicked and evil.
Yeah.
And it may not be. He may just be blindly following something that he was told. How do you go about discerning the difference between the two?
I think the only way is what we talked about last week. It's got to be with relationship. You can't do it from an arm's length. You're going to have to hear what's in their heart the best that you can. Of course, the Holy Spirit is going to be able to help us and give us that discernment too, that we can size up the situation. But somewhere along the line, somebody's got to be able to sit with them and talk to them. But if we're so put off by what they're saying that our defenses have gone up, we've basically done what they did.
Oh, agreed. Yeah.
So we're doing it to them.
Right.
Instead of us being empathetic. Now, I'm not saying that you lay down and become a doormat. I'm not talking about that at all. But I think in the process of restitution or reconciliation, as it were, that there has to be somebody that takes the lead, not in saying you're wrong, it's taking the lead and saying, sit down and show me where you're right. Or show me, tell me, talk to me. What is it you're seeing? Because guess what? And here's what I've learned, and you've helped me on this. We all have blind spots.
Right.
We don't want them.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's part of what we do to each other, is that you don't realize you have carbuncles, and I hold a mirror up and you get to see and go, what is that? You're actually able to see those things for the first time because I bring a mirror to the table and hold it up, and then you go, oh, well, you ought to see what you got hanging off of you. And we're able to do that, and we're able to say, oh, God, what is this?
Hold on, carbuncles? Yeah. What the heck's that?
I
really don't even know what that is.
That's an old hillbilly saying. Oh. It's like a big wart that...
Oh my! Only a 65-year-old old fart would know what that is. Carbuncles? Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Clearly, there's an age gap here.
Sorry, that's an old hillbilly slang word.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, but I mean, it's true. We have these oddities, these things that I think sometimes it takes someone sitting across from us to be able to say, "Hey, do you realize?"
Right.
You know, you have to be open to that. For sure, to receive it, because if not, it can come across as criticism, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think if we're going to be a leader that takes the ridicule, we're also going to have to be a leader that's going to have the intestinal fortitude to be able to sit down with those that are accusing and be able to have the conversation. It may not get anywhere. They may be so blind that they wouldn't know the truth if it hit them in the head.
Right.
But when I left here last week, I was softer towards them. And I've had some bad ones. Yeah. But I was softer towards them.
Right.
And I've just tried to understand what caused it. And I think what it was is I just came to a realization that we all have places that we're blind.
Oh, yeah.
Theirs is just very apparent. There's some sins that everybody and your neighbor can tell that you're doing it.
Right. Right.
But there are others that are hidden that no one knows about, that they hide in the heart.
Yeah.
That's why Jesus said, well, you may not have murdered anybody,
Right.
but if you hated him in your heart, which no one can see, people can see murder.
Yeah.
They can see the blood, the blunt instrument. But if you hate him in your heart, it's the same thing as you've done.
They can see an outburst of anger. That's pretty easy to see when that happens.
It's not hard to miss, is it?
Yeah.
So I've been processing hard this whole idea of how do you deal with the angry mob? Well, do you deal with the mob or do you deal with the leadership of the mob? Do you deal with the ones picketing and hold the signs, or do you find the one that organized it and you deal with them, hoping that it'll then spread through the ranks if you're able to make some differences?
Right. Well, and how do you discern the heart of the one that's leading the angry mob? How do you discern their heart? How do you know if they're wicked or if they're blind? And how do you know if you have empathy and compassion or if you deal with them sternly?
Yeah.
Like, and again, like, so let's even say you fought, and I agree with the relationship. I think you've got to, and this goes for anybody in the church. I see so many people throwing judgment out and throwing criticisms out at people. And it's like they form their own angry mob.
Yeah.
And they're real quick to cast judgment to people that they don't know personally.
Right.
Like, especially you get online and people just, oh, well, he's this and this and this. It's like, you don't even know the guy.
Yeah.
You don't even know the guy.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you should sit down like we are now and have a conversation. And if you're not in a close enough proximity with that person to have this kind of relationship, maybe you need to keep your mouth shut, you know?
Right.
Now, I know some of that stuff was like, well, he's posted it on, it was on a public forum where he posted it, so he's going to be susceptible to public criticism. And, I don't know. That's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
But it is this idea of, so I'll give you a verse. This is what was making me think about the angry mob. And I knew that you were talking about the blindness, and I knew you were having some compassion. And maybe that's from your older years and you've got more compassion. I guess I have less compassion for some of these people. Not that I don't love them. I'm not going to continue to sit there and try to kick a dead horse. Like, my willingness to suffer with them, it's like, dude, you either get it or you don't. Like, I'm not going to continue to sit here and hold your hand in hopes that maybe here in 5 years, 10 years, you'll get it. Because in the meantime, I can go out and reaching people for the gospel, you know? Now, I'm not going to say that I'm necessarily this guy, but so this is in Titus chapter 1, and in verse 10 it says, For there are many rebellious people, mere talkers and deceivers, especially those of the circumcision group. And then he says in verse 11, he says, they must be silenced, because they are ruining whole households by teaching things that ought not to teach. And they're doing it for dishonest gain, he goes on to say. But this is Paul writing to Titus, and clearly they're having troubles with the Jews, saying that you need to be circumcised. That in order to be saved, you've got to be circumcised too. And so they're just adding to this law. He's like, dude, no, that's not correct. Like, you're not saved by works. No, circumcision isn't what saves you. It's strictly faith in Jesus. That's it. Right. Faith in Jesus alone. That's all you got. It's not faith in Jesus and circumcision. No, it's faith in Jesus, period.
Right.
But he says they must be silenced.
Right.
And there's other passages that talk about rebuking your brothers. Yeah. And I'm not of the capacity, man. There's plenty of people that you get online and they're all about rebuke. Like, they're going to rebuke anybody and everybody. Like, that's their ministry, is the ministry of rebuking, you know? Now, I'm not going to go that route. But you can't deny that the Bible does talk about rebuking people.
Right.
And like I said, my opinion is, I'm not going to rebuke you. I'm just going to move on without you. Like, you just continue to live in your little cesspool of whatever that is, and I'm going to move on without you. But there are times in which Paul says, these people got to be silenced.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's an easy decision to make. Like that, you need to saturate that with all kinds of prayer before you go silencing somebody. Like, you better make sure that you're not on the wrong side.
Right.
Because what you'll find is the Pharisees, they thought the same thing of Jesus. This guy has to be silenced.
Right.
And we've got to do whatever it takes to silence him.
That was their goal.
And so clearly they were on the wrong side of who's doing the silencing. It was the Pharisees that needed to be silenced, but the Pharisees also thought that they needed to silence Jesus.
Right.
And so what do you do with something like that as far as handling the angry mob and people that need to be silenced? Where's that line between empathy and rebuking?
Yeah.
Where's that line between long-suffering and bearing with them until they eventually get it and the blinders come off versus just being straight up honest and harsh with them, saying, listen, you need to get your crap together?
Yeah. I'd probably say that would be situational, but I think where the line is drawn, it has to be if they're sowing discord among the brethren, right? If they're affecting households, that's like we had spoken there a little before. I don't even know if we had the cameras on. We were talking. Is that when you cross the line and what your dissenting thoughts and ideas are related to the leadership, and you start sowing that and affecting households with it, that's when there needs to be an eyeball-to-eyeball discussion. And one of the things that I have noticed with most people that are in that place where they're spreading or doing, when you challenge them just with relationship, you challenge them just with love, and that you just want to be able to have, let me just hear what it is that you're having challenge with, but you have to listen to me too. They don't want it.
Right.
They don't want it. They'll exit stage right to keep from having to do that in most cases. Now did you find that to be the case in the situation that you had in your experience? Or did they want to go toe to toe?
So I had both. I absolutely had some interactions, and what's crazy is a lot of these interactions were with the elders. A lot of these interactions were with the elders, the leaders of the church. Like, if I'm out, these are the guys that run the show.
Right.
These are the top dogs of the church.
Right.
These are the ones that are making the decisions behind the scenes. And so there were times where I had certainly won a brother over. I had met, and every time I wanted to meet, every time something had come up, I'd wanted to meet, to have that relationship. Mm-hmm. And there were times where eventually enough talking, we could work it out. And maybe we didn't agree fully with each other, but we at least came to the realization that we just need to agree to disagree.
Yeah,
and it's okay.
A working disagreement.
Yeah, it's fine. We've come to realize that this isn't something worth fighting about.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got bigger fish to fry. We've got a kingdom to go out there to grow. So let's just move past this.
Mm-hmm.
And those were good. But then there were times too where I absolutely, on the issue, and the story on the issue of where I was saying the word stud. And so I got reined in early on when I was preaching for saying freaking, darn, and heck. And again, you've got to pick your battles. And so the elders, they called me into the elders meeting. They said, well, we've been having a problem with your slang. You're saying freaking, darn, and heck. And I'm like, man, are those really that bad? How I grew up, I'm like, these aren't that bad to me.
I know.
My
mom said them to me.
I know, right? I'm like, this is just how my parents raised me. I think they did an okay job, but maybe they're going to hell. I don't know. Yeah. And so I got reined in early on for saying those. And so I was like, all right, whatever. You got to pick your battles. This isn't one worth fighting. And so I would just watch my language. Well, it would have been 6 months later then, and I'm doing a great job of not saying any of those words. And they even admitted that. So then I'm doing the story of David and Goliath. And I'm just building up Goliath as this behemoth of a guy. And I'm like, man, this guy was a stud, just a giant, whatever. Just talking what comes naturally to me. And what's funny is I had a good friend, and I'm not going to mention names, but if I give too many details, people know exactly who I'm talking about. Basically, there was this guy that he and I became really close through a circumstance that happened. And he and I ended up becoming really close. And he started to come to our church. And he was going through a rough season in his life, and I went out to lunch with him the following Monday after that sermon. And we went out I'll never forget it, we're in Subway down in Coffeyville. And we're eating a Subway sandwich, and he said, you know what, Brett? And he looked me dead in the eyes. He said, you know what, Brett? He said, I love your sermons. I was like, oh, cool. You know what? What about them, He said, you just hit me. You just strike a chord. And it challenges me, and it makes me want to rise up and be more for God and do more for God and be a better man, And I'm like, oh, cool. And he's like, dude, he said this last Sunday. He said, man, you're talking about Goliath, and you're talking about how this guy's just a stud, and you build up this enemy, And man, it makes me want to rise up and be an even greater stud for God's kingdom, you know? And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. But it was specifically the word stud that just stuck with him. And he's like, man, that makes me want to rise up. And I was like, cool. Keep in mind, I had no clue what was coming for the following Tuesday, the very next day. It was a very timely thing. I've never told you that part. Well, so then the following Tuesday then, got an elders meeting. And when the elders beat the pastor to church, you know you're in trouble. Like, because I would always, whenever we had an elders meeting, I would always get to church 15 minutes early just to sit there and just pray and just let God just, guide everything that we're doing here and whatever. Help us not to mess this thing up. And so I get there 15 minutes early like I typically would, and they're already there. And I'm like, I'm in trouble. I did something.
Yeah.
I did something wrong because they've already had time to meet and talk about what it was that I did.
Right.
Like, I already knew how this goes. I've had enough of these that I know how this one goes. And I'm like, whatever. I don't have a clue what I did. But I'm like, whatever, God, whatever. So I'm not going to change anything that I do. I'm not going to, oh my goodness, I better go in there and get buddies. Yeah, schmooze them or whatever. Like, I'm like, whatever. They're in the meeting room where we typically meet. I'm going to do what I typically do. I'm just going to go to my office. And so I would go to my office and I just sat down. I'm like, Father, I don't know what I did wrong this last week, or whoever knows when it was. I'm just like, I don't know what I did wrong, but can you just please guide whatever's happening right now? Like, you can just feel the weight of, they're in the room, and you know that you're about to pay the piper. Mm-hmm. And so I just did what I typically do, and then I go into the room with the elders meeting, and they're already sitting there.
Oh, boy.
Got their arms crossed and their straight faces, and they're in their power position, and I'm just like, oh, no, like, here we go. And so I sat down, and I'm like, and I can't tell you how many times, man, they would always refer to me as the kid, because I was young, fresh out of college, early 20s. And I can't tell you how many times, though, I felt like I was the grown-up. And I'm sitting there, and there was an awkward silence for what seemed like for a long time. It probably wasn't that long, but it seemed like a long time. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, who's going to start the meeting? Mm-hmm. Like, who's going to start this off? There's clearly an uncomfortable situation
here. Who's
going
to throw the first stone?
Yeah, who's going to throw the first stone? Like, let's just get into it, whatever this is.
Yeah.
Like, no sense in beating around the bush or waiting.
Right.
Like, let's just hit me with it. And so the one elder, he opened with prayer, if you call it that.
Yeah.
Lord, guide and direct our hearts. And, dude, his heart was so far from God's direction in this.
Right.
Like, they already had an agenda that they had come with that they're about to just lay out. It's their agenda. It's not God's agenda.
Right.
It's theirs.
Yeah.
And they're going to just put me in my place and tell me what I did wrong. Yeah. And so their heart was not in the prayer whatsoever. And so then they finished but they said all the right things.
Oh, yeah.
Then they finished the prayer. And again, there was like an awkward silence. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, here I am, the kid. And I remember just thinking like, all right, who's going to have the pear to, who's going to grow a pear and be the first one to say something? Mm-hmm. Like, but I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to mention anything. I'm not going to be the one that starts this meeting because I'm going to let them work through this.
Right.
Like, I'm tired of being the adult in these situations. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to be silent and I'm going to play dumb. I know something's wrong. I don't know what's wrong, but I know something's wrong, and I'm not going to ask the question like, so what's wrong, guys? I feel like no. I'm just going to be silent.
Put the weight on them.
I'm going to put the weight on them. I'm going to let them bring it up. Like, you always talked about me being the kid. Time to put your big boy pants on.
Yeah.
And so I'm just sitting there, and I'm just sitting there like, I'm not saying a word.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know how long it was, but it was a while. It was awkward silence for a while. And I'm like, dude, I'm just going to embrace this awkward silence. Like, I'm not going to let them out of this. Mm-hmm. And so finally, the one elder, he's like, well, we've been talking. And I'm like, no kidding.
Yeah,
like,
really.
I didn't know, had no clue you guys have been talking, So he's like, well, we've been talking, and you could tell he's trying to like tippy-toe around this and beat around the bush a little bit. But he finally just got into it, and he's like, well, we've been having a problem with your slang again. And in my mind, I'm like, Father, when did I ever say freaking darn or heck? I mean, you know how you can process thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a million.
Yeah.
And literally,
Yeah.
I'm running the last 6 months worth of sermons in my mind. Just, I'm like, didn't say it there, didn't say it there, didn't say it there, didn't say it. Like,
right.
And I'm like, Father, like you and I both know the precautions that I've taken in my sermon prep to not say those words.
Right.
And I'm like, I've never said them. I've never said them. Like after I've just recalled every sermon the last 6 months, I'm confident to know, well, I've never said it.
Right.
I've never said one of those 3 words. And so I'm just sitting there, I'm letting him finish his thing. And he said, well, we've had a problem with your slang, whatever, and, we just need you to just rein it in, And I said his name. I said so-and-so. I said, please, because again, they're my elders, and so the Bible says you got to respect your elders. And so I'm trying to do the best I can to respect my elders, even though I think this is really dumb right now. Mm-hmm. I said, so-and-so, I said, please forgive me. I said, but if I may be so bold to say, I don't think I've said freaking darn or heck at all for the last 6 months since we had this conversation last time. Mm-hmm. Well, no. And we even talked about it, and we none of us could recall a time where you said one of those words.
Well, why are we here?
And so that's what, in my mind, I'm like, so what are we even here talking about? And so then he said, well, yeah, we even talked about it, we couldn't recall a time when you said one of those words. But this last Sunday, you said the word stud. Dude, I was a kid fresh out of Bible college, ready to change the world. And it's like you took a knife and just deflated me. My heart and my mind and my demeanor, just everything just, are you kidding me? That's why you guys showed up 30 minutes early? That's what you guys are so mad about? I said the word stud? I at least could somewhat understand their argument for freaking darn and heck, I guess. Mm-hmm. But stud? What? Dude. Right? So wait, it gets better. So the one gentleman, he said, yeah, when you said the word stud, I thought of a male prostitute, and I didn't hear another word you said the rest of the sermon. I was like, what? A male prostitute? What? In the context that I grew up in, I'm like, my dad called, now I'm not saying a word because I'm so discouraged and so confused by, are we really having this conversation? I can't believe this is happening. It gets way worse. So, or better, depends on how you look at it. It's a good story, but it's sad that people are there. So I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, male prostitute, what? My dad has called me a stud. When it comes to athletics, he's like, dude, you got to be a stud, man. You got to rise up. And, I'm like, yeah, that's a good thing. But I'm even in the context in which I used it in the sermon, and again, I'm processing all this a million miles an hour. In the context, I'm like, I was talking about Goliath. Even if you think of a prostitute, he probably slept with a lot of women. He wasn't a Christian man, He probably slept. He was the biggest dude in the village. The dude was sleeping around. Mm. So even in that context, it would still fit. And so I'm processing all this, and he was still talking. He's like, telling me how he didn't hear another word said the rest of the sermon, and he was just hung up on the word stud. And then I'm thinking too, I'm like, man, this shows your level of maturity.
Yeah, that's where your heart's at.
Yeah, that's where your heart's at. Did you really not hear another word? You heard the word stud and just everything went out the window. So he went on. He told his story of why he was offended and why it hurt his feelings. And I can't make this crap up. I wish to Jesus I had a video camera in this room to film this. Everything I'm going to say and do, and we may edit this out, I don't know. This is exactly what the other guy said and did. And he said, so when that guy finished, he said, yeah, and when you said the word stud, so this guy was in horse trading for years ago, doing horse deals, and I don't know, he's into horses. He said, yeah, and when you said the word stud, all I could think of was a horse out in the pasture and his dick slapping his belly. He did it. He did the action. And he said the word dick. And I'm just like, dude, I can't make this up. I cannot make this up. And I'm sitting there. I'm having one of those moments where I'm like, is this for real?
Yeah.
Is this a dream?
Yeah.
Is this a nightmare that I wake up from like, oh man, that was crazy? When he's doing this, dude, my mind just went, I was already in complete confusion of, is this for real? And then when he did this, it took it to a whole nother level of,
I can imagine.
And I'm just sitting, I'm like, And in my mind, I'm like, God, is this really happening? Like, it's like the whole room just was in slow-mo.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, I'm like, is this really happening? God, we are in a church and having an elders meeting. And these are the elders of the church. Is this really happening? And I'm thinking, what if the people of the congregation knew that this was happening?
Mm-hmm.
What if I had a camera recording this, filming this, and then the next Sunday we're like, hey, I want to share with you guys what happened in our last elders meeting, and then project it on the big screen for the entire congregation to see. These are the people that are leading our church right now.
Yeah.
I had very little to nothing to say in that meeting because I was just, even though my mind was processing a million thoughts a minute, dude, I was so discouraged. And so this is a long story to get to your question, or you get to
I
your
forgot the question now.
So long story short, so the one elder who thought of the horse illustration, I eventually won him over. The other guy, he came into my office and had a dictionary, a big old thick dictionary, Webster's Dictionary. Slammed it on my desk, as loud as a massive book can make on the sound of a desk. See what it says? Look. And I'm like, I had no clue what he's talking about. I thought we're over this. It was the definitions for the word stud. And you know how they did give like 5 definitions, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was like number 1 or number 2. It said something about like male prostitution or something, or male prostitute. And I'm like, okay, you know, I read his. I didn't say anything yet, but I read his, but I read the others. Well, mine was in there too for like, it's, you know, slang for like, you know, I forgot what it said, but something like, it wasn't a bad thing, you know? And so I'm like, I said, yeah, so-and-so. I said, I see yours. I said, and I turned it around. I said, do you also see number 5? Well, you shouldn't be saying that at all. He didn't answer the question, for one. There was no meeting in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were at odds like you wouldn't believe. And all he can see is red. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, he's at a level 12 for sure. And so he's telling me basically that I just need to submit to what he says, and I don't ever need to say the word stud ever again. He was telling me about a story, and this is where I think this stems from, and we'll get into the sacred cows, because I think this is where we get into. I think this is where the angry mob comes, is from these sacred cows. He was telling me a story when he was young, how his mom had a swear jar, and how they had a list of words, and if you said any one of those words, you had to put money in the swear jar.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, you could see that this was ingrained in him as a child. Like this is,
right.
And I'm like, oh, there's a deeper issue here.
Yeah.
Like he's telling me about a story when he was a kid about a swear
Mm-hmm.
jar. So, anyways, this is not a let's seek to understand each other's position. This is he's here to conquer and win. Period.
Right.
And I'm like, and I said so and so. I said, man, we're clearly at odds. Like, because now I'm at a point where I've already had time to pray about this, past the elders meeting. This is a week after the elders meeting. I've had plenty of time to pray about this, to read God's word, to ask God myself, God, am I in the wrong? Like, show me.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same token, at what point are they just being petty and stupid?
Right.
Like, where's that balance? Like,
right.
And so I didn't fight the first ones, freaking darn and heck. I didn't, you got to pick your battles. I didn't pick that one. But now I'm at a place where I was going to let this ride. I was just going to let this roll, and okay, they got to share their things, whatever. I'm just going to move on and just preach. But that one elder, he came in, and no, it's his way or the highway. And it's basically, you need to admit that you're wrong. Like this isn't something you and I are walking away from until you admit you're wrong. And I'm going to show you that you're wrong.
Mm.
And so now I'm at a place where I'm like, okay, this is one I'm going to pick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to pick it because
Mm-hmm.
I can clearly see the anger across the table from
Mm-hmm.
me. But I'm at a place where I'm going to pick this one.
Mm-hmm.
And not out of anger, not out of the same temperament that I was met with, but I just respectfully had to disagree. I'm like, listen, man, I disagree. Because again, you can see the five definitions that are there. Mine's one of those. I understand that it maybe have meant something different to your generation. I said, listen, you heard what so-and-so thought. They thought it was something else. They thought it was a stud horse out in the pasture. You thought of male prostitution. He thought of a stud horse. And I'm thinking of like a stud athlete. So look at the generation gap that we got between us. what it means to my generation isn't the same thing that means to your
Right.
generation. And then I told him the story of the guy that I met with in Subway.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you wonder why a lot of these younger people are coming in. Like some of this language is relational to these people. It connects with them. Like, in fact, and I gave him his name. I said, in fact, so-and-so mentioned that specific word struck a chord with him. And the very words that are striking chords with these younger people are apparently some of the very words that strike an offensive chord with you.
You'd have to put
with your
money in the
generation.
swear jar for.
Yeah. And I'm like, so what do we need to do with this? I said, we're the leadership of the church. What do we got to do about this? Oh, I don't know. And so I'm thinking, and I'm praying in real time. And like, Father, what we got a problem.
Right.
We can't move forward like this. We're the part of the leadership. He's an elder. I'm a pastor. We can't move forward. And so I said, so then I came up with the idea. I said, what do you think about this? I said, what if we had an outside source, a pastor from some other church, come in and counsel us? No different than they would counsel a married couple. How would you feel about that? Well, yeah, I think it'd be okay. Yeah. I said, perfect. I said, I'll tell you what. I'll even let you pick the pastor. Because I'm thinking any pastor in his right mind is going to be able to see how petty this is. So I'm okay with you even picking the pastor. He said, okay, yeah. I said, perfect. I said, I'll let you pick the pastor. You set the meeting up. I said, you don't even have to tell me who it is. I don't care. You just tell me whenever the meeting is. And then I'll be here at the church. We'll meet here at the church, and you just say, hey, Brett, we're going to be at the church at 3 o'clock on Tuesday, or whatever. Oh, yeah, I think it'd be a great idea. Perfect. So he sets the meeting up. I have no clue who the pastor is. Sets the meeting up. We come in there, and I knew the guy, and I was like, oh, I think this will be great. I think this will be wonderful. I think he's a wonderful guy. And so we get into the meeting, and basically the pastor of this other church, he agreed. He said, so-and-so, he said, I think Brett's right. I think you just need to agree to disagree on this. I don't think this is something worth fighting about. This isn't a hill worth dying on.
Mm-hmm.
And all he could see was red again. Literally stormed out the door, slammed the door behind him as hard as you could slam it, never saw him again. Left the church. That was the last time he was in the church building.
Wow.
He was that angry over the word stud that he slammed the door behind him, and we never saw him again. And so I had some circumstances where I was able to, and I say win over, not that I won him over to my full side, but I say win over in the sense of we were able to still have relationship.
Right.
And we're still able to do kingdom things together.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of times, like I said, I didn't fully cater to where they were at. They didn't fully cater to where I was at, but we at least had an understanding that this is stupid.
Right.
This isn't worth fighting about.
Right.
There's bigger fish we got to fry. Let's just pursue the kingdom.
Right.
But then there were times where I was met with that kind of temperament.
Right.
You're not winning it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what kind of relationship you have with this guy.
Right.
You're not winning him over.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know, to answer your question, long story short, half of them we met in the middle, and there was half of them that there was no meeting in the middle.
Let me throw this in. So I was praying when we got here, just asking Lord, said, Lord, would you take me to the scriptures, to the place that you would have us give attention to, that you've written, to be able to shine some light on what our conversation is about. So here's where he took me. I literally, you just saw me pick my Bible a minute ago and open it up. No idea where I'm going. Have no idea where this scripture is in my mind or where it is in the scripture. But here's where he took me. It's 1 Peter chapter 3, and I don't have my glasses on. So
We're going to get
that's a real problem.
Jody translation here. I'll fact check
so,
here. 1 Peter what now?
Yeah, this is the Passion translation. 1 Peter 3.
You're going to get hate mail for that, I bet. Somebody like,
Yeah,
Passion
probably.
translation. King James is the only way.
I love the Passion translation.
1 Peter chapter 3.
Yeah. Verse 8. So he says, now this is the goal, to live in harmony with one another and to demonstrate affectionate love, sympathy, and kindness toward other believers. Let humility describe who you are as you dearly love one another. Never retaliate when someone treats you wrongly, nor insult those who insult you, but instead respond by speaking a blessing over them, because a blessing is what God promised to give you. For the Scriptures tell us, whoever wants to embrace true life and find beauty in each day must stop speaking out hurtful words and never deceive in what they say. Always turn from what is wrong and cultivate what is good. Eagerly pursue peace in every relationship, making it your prize. For the eyes of the Lord rest upon the godly and upon the heart, and his heart responds to their prayers, but he turns his back on those who practice evil. Why would anyone harm you if you're passionate and devoted in pleasing God? But even if you happen to suffer doing what is right, you will have a joyful experience and the blessing of God. So there is a pretty pat example of the way the Scripture in 1 Peter talks to us about being able to deal with someone that's hurling insults or that's making life difficult, is to speak blessing over them.
Right.
That's hard to do.
Oh, 100%.
In the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
That's difficult.
Yeah.
And that's not just for the one that's receiving the grief. That should also be for the one that's bringing the grief.
Right.
They should be able to walk in 1 Peter 3
Right,
also.
Yeah. Especially if you're an elder in the church.
Yeah. I just thought that was interesting that's the thing that he brought.
So you've got those verses, and I don't, and again, I'm not saying that I know because I don't. That's why we're here. We're asking the hard questions, and we're figuring out where these balances are. There's absolutely times to have compassion and humility towards another person, and I think you certainly lead with that. But then there's also times where Paul says these people got to be silenced.
Yeah.
You got to you can't let these people run the church.
Right.
You got to silence them.
Yeah.
Because they're going to run this whole ship in the dirt.
Yeah.
So again, where's that balance between having empathy but rebuking them?
Maybe it's not a balance. Maybe it's a process that the rebuke comes on the end of empathy, the attempt at relationship, and
Right.
you know what I mean? Maybe that's the end of it, that they say, you be quiet and, get rebuked and
Right.
hit the door if you can't control yourself. It makes me wonder, because that's the sense that I get from the 1 Peter passage. I mean, we have very clear how Christ deals with it. It's like it said when he was verbally abused. I was just looking again. I can't believe he's got me in 1 Peter 2, that when he was verbally abused, he did not return it with an insult. When he suffered, he did not threaten retaliation. Jesus faithfully entrusted himself into the hands of God who judges righteously. So how can we not do the same thing?
Right, yeah.
But I do get that in church leadership, we actually have to have that chance to be able to go, no, you need to be quiet. What you're doing, you're in the wrong space here. But I just wonder if it's our default that we start with.
We start with the rebuke.
We know we end with it.
Oh.
That it ends up being the end of the story. That we try relationship. We try to be kind and
But don't you think that's how it should go? What do you think is the model? I mean, I think it should start with relationship for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
But don't you think that's how it should go? Is if the relationship doesn't work?
Yeah.
If the partnering, it's like, listen, dude, we're trying to tell you, man, this is not good.
Right.
And they're still not listening. I think that's when the rebuke comes.
Right.
Don't you think that's
I
the
totally
correct model?
agree.